2, 3.
All right, well, greetings, everybody. Welcome once again to the Rec Poker Podcast. As always, our official sponsor is Running Aces Racetrack, Casino, and Hotel, and a couple of other sponsors, Learn Pro Poker and website AMP. This is another one of our chats editions, and tonight we're going to hang out with Sky Matsuhashi. You know him. He's been on the show a few times before. He's a podcaster, he's a coach, he's a trainer, he's a player, and we're going to roll up our sleeves and dig into some cool stuff with Sky tonight. But let's first introduce the panel. My name is Steve Fredland. I go by Rec Poker Steve in our Poker Stars home game. And I found a cool quote by Stephen Lubit, or Lube. I don't know who he is, but I like the quote. He says, "Poker is not simply a game of odds, moves, and calculations. It's a game of controlled and exploited emotions, including greed, fear, overconfidence, and anger."
Nice. Well, I'm Andrew Feist. I'm dealer 412 in the Poker Home Games. And John Lennon, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
Mm. And I'm Chris Jones. I'm 5x5 on Poker Stars and Twitter, and I don't trust anyone who doesn't have a favorite hand.
Well, I'm Jim Reed, Bluffsterini in the home game, and at Hold'em_Steelers on Twitter. And I'm just here to tell you that if you're playing online and you're not using a HUD, you're doing it wrong.
And I'm John Somsky, and I'm Poker Geek MN everywhere. And I have a quote from Somerset Maugham. "Poker is the only game fit for a grown man."
And I'm Rob Washam. I'm Radman50 everywhere. And I found out that in Laughlin, there is no bluffing, just like in Harrah's at Kansas City. There's just no bluffing. You cannot bluff. They're going to call no matter what.
So, Rob, at the end of your tour, you're going to have to tell us all the places we can and where we cannot bluff. You're going to have to.
I will let you know. If
right.
I can pull off a bluff in Samstown, I'll let you know.
Good.
So does that mean you can overbet?
It doesn't matter. The bet sizing is not a concept that most of the people are aware of.
Well, that's what I'm saying. When you've got it, then
yeah. Well, yeah. When I had it, it was obviously very easy to get paid. But if you don't have it, don't try to bluff them off a hand, because when you bet, all they ask is, how much is it?
So pro tip to you, Rob, just try to have it more. All right.
Yes, that's what I've been trying to do.
All right, well, guys, a couple of quick things before we jump in to our conversation with Sky. We'll cover this stuff at the end in more detail, but just want to call it out. If you want to continue on in your PokerStars membership, you're playing the home games now. As of January 1, you need that free membership, and you need to have your PokerStars username in your free membership, or you're going to be suspended. All right, you've all been warned for the 10,000th time. We'll talk about it more. Reach out if you have any questions. Also, Fareed Jatin, we got the training course coming up starting in February, exclusive for Rec Poker Nation. Information on the website. Again, we'll talk about it more later. We have a bunch of coupons and giveaways associated to that training, including tonight. We got a few folks here that are listening in, members. We're going to give away some discounts on that training. And finally, save the date, January 27th. It is our first award show, and we are super fired up about it. It's going to be a great time, so mark your calendars for that deal. But with that, let's bring him in. Sky Matsuhashi, how are we doing, Sky?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me, everybody. And I want to share one of my own favorite quotes. It's from Stephen King from one of his books called Wizard and Glass. And one of the characters said, control what you can control, maggot, and let everything else take a flying F at you. And if you must go down with your guns blazing. So it's one of my favorites. So a quote I try to live by.
Nice. So when you first read that, were you like, man, this is right it, or did you just kind of stumble upon it later?
No, as soon as I read that, I whipped out my quote journal and wrote it down right away.
Nice.
Yep.
That's Roland Trainer, right? That's
exactly. Oh, so you've read the Dark Tower series?
Oh, yeah. One of my favorites. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well,
I wouldn't be surprised if Rob Washam, you got to read that one too. You'll enjoy that.
I'll have to try to. I'll put it on my list of things to read.
Yeah, it's long though. It's 7 books total, and Stephen King writes freaking. Hold on.
Well, I know I'm reading the Wheel
for
of
all of you audio listeners,
compendiums like the 700 pages, and this is the 4th book that I'm reading right now.
I'm reading the Wheel of Time series right now.
So that's the best.
That's the long series can
That's
be.
really good. What book are you on?
I'm only on book 3 right now.
Oh my gosh.
Steve's going
so
crazy.
I got a long ways to go.
You do.
I think
Yeah, I
I'm
really
reading
love
The
that.
interesting
7
thing
of
is,
those books.
yeah, Robert Jordan passed away after the 11th book. So the 12th and 13th, it was written by Brandon Sanderson, but he did a great job keeping true to the story, to the characters. So you'll enjoy it.
Brandon Sanderson is one of my favorite authors anyway. So I've read all of the stuff that he's written. So it's very cool.
Awesome.
Can't wait to get into Rhythm of War, which just came out. I think already just came out. So anyway.
We found a rabbit hole, Steve.
Well, no, you are listening. You're listening to the podcast. Welcome to the show. We have sort of switched our genres. If you're expecting Rec Poker, you can now find that on the Sunday release. The Tuesday releases are now the podcast. We're going to be dropping things like Somerset Mom, John Lennon. We'll be discussing the merits of the Stephen King series. Maybe we'll talk about HUDs, but that might not be nerdy enough for this group. We have to go to other things like book series. No, it's good stuff, you guys. I love it. I love just getting in there, man. It's fun. So Sky, let's catch up a little bit. What's been happening? So we've had you on. People that have been with us for a while know that we had you on. I don't know, 2, 3, 4 times a couple years ago. Now, what's been going on in your world with the whole the membership site, the writing, the podcast? What's going on, man?
I can't remember how many books I had the last time we met. About
377 books you had the last time. I think it was I think that was the number.
Yep. But since then, for sure, I've written 2 more: pre-flop online poker and then post-flop online poker. They just really dive into the realm of online, utilizing HUDs. Like Jim, I know Jim's into HUDs. He loves it. It's all about using HUD, not all about using HUDs. It's about playing online poker, but utilizing your HUD to analyze your opponents, pay attention to what they're doing, look at their tendencies and stuff with the HUD, but then also just general pre-flop, post-flop strategies as well. And I also started the pokerforge.com, my training membership site, where I have 8 full courses right now, with the 9th one to come soon. And that's going really strong. And the Smart Poker Study podcast and the Daily Poker Tips podcast. So I've got lots going on right now.
Okay, yeah. So what are you enjoying the most of all the stuff that you're working on? I know it's an unfair question because everybody says I love it all, and I get it. But if you had to sort of choose one thing, what sort of really makes you come alive, or what are you really enjoying?
It's the Poker Forge, my training website. I'm constantly in there, in the Facebook group, communicating with members and stuff. But I'm always going through, listening to member requests, questions on things, and I come up with new content that fit into current existing courses and stuff. And I just really love interacting with them. The other things are great too. And one of the great things about what I do, my job is multifaceted. There's so many different things I'm constantly involved in that it makes it interesting. I don't get bored with any one thing because I don't spend forever on that one thing.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. So I'm just looking at all the questions that are piling in. Like, everyone, feel free to ask questions. You guys know the drill. You have to jump in here at any point in time. But I'll start off with kind of the HUD thing. And I know we've talked about HUDs quite a bit. Jim loves this thing. We actually offer HUDs through Rec Poker with different things. But as a casual recreational player that's maybe dabbling online now because of COVID, but doesn't really love it. Like, we're playing online some because we kind of have to get our fix. But I haven't really dealt with HUDs. I'm thinking, generally there's a lot of people out that are kind of thinking like this. What would you have to say to them? Like, why should they really be considering a HUD? Even as sort of a casual player, what's the value of using a HUD versus, man, I'm just kind of, I'm playing for fun. I want to win a little bit of money, but why look at a HUD?
The value of it is free information. If you sat down at a live table and your friend told you, player in seat 1, 3 bets like mad. Player 2, believe all of his 3 bets. He's only doing it with aces. Just that little bit of information will help you make better decisions at the table. That's just live. Your buddy tells you about those 2 guys. Yeah. Well, online with a HUD, you have so much more information, and it's free. Poker Tracker 4 is running in the background, records all the stats, all the tendencies of your opponents. It's just up to you to look at those numbers, interpret them, and then make plays based on those numbers to exploit what you know about them.
Yeah, and I think, you mentioned sort of capturing all the hands. That's another huge benefit that people don't really realize. When you can go back and actually assess, all of your profitability and all your own stats in different situations, that's huge. One question I have for you around the HUD is, I played with it a little bit. I don't play much online personally, and I know a lot of people are in the same way. I layered on a HUD. I'm like, oh, it's kind of cool. But right away, it was like, this is intimidating. Like, it's too much information for the level that I want to play, and I'm going to be multitasking a little bit. Talk about that. Like, is it useful for somebody who just wants a couple pieces of information? And what are those couple pieces that you'd say, all right, here's what you really need to pay attention to. Like you said, if your buddy was going to stop by and kind of assess the table for you.
Before I get to that, I have one question for you. You're multitasking, so does that mean you're emailing and Twittering while you're trying to play good poker?
I may or may not be developing like business strategies for people while I'm playing online.
I got you. Yeah. So what the two things, like the bare minimum that you need from a HUD, and if you only put these two pieces of information in your HUD, you're going to be such a better player or better at understanding your opponents. And that's VPIP and PFR. VPIP stands for voluntarily put money in the pot. So if you see, let's just look at two extremes. 1%. They never play anything except for aces, right? Aces and kings. The other one, if they have 100% VPIP, they play every single hand, 9 deuce off, ace, king, pocket fours, everything. So just seeing that 1% will tell you how often they like to play their hands, and that gives you an indication of what hands they play. The other one is PFR, which is pre-flop raise, and that tells you how often they make a raise pre-flop, whether it's an open raise, a 3-bet, a 4-bet, whatever it might be. So those two numbers are really helpful to classify your opponents. And one thing you want to look for is the gap in between the two. You can imagine if somebody is a 70% VPIP, they play 70% of hands, but they're a 5% PFR, they only raise 5% of the time. Mm-hmm. That gap of 65% is them limping and calling all the time. They're a super loose passive fish, and you could target them for value. And earlier, Rob was talking about playing in Laughlin, nobody folds. That 70/5 player is never folding. Because he's never folding, you're just going to go to value town on him and probably never bluff against him.
So presumably that allows you then to play, I mean, obviously more tables at the same time, because you can just sort of look at those stats right away as you're reacting to their sort of action, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Helps you to multi-table.
Yeah, and the other thing that you just mentioned with Poker Tracker, which I think that not as many rec players who are maybe starting to take the game seriously sort of think about, but I'm wondering if you can talk about the idea of, and you have 2 books on studying, so I'm asking you specifically because this is something I think that you're really immersed in, is the idea of sort of like self-reflection or self-evaluation and how a player even goes about that process. Like, how do I take, okay, I'm collecting all this information, I'm playing all these hands, I've got all this data, now what do I do with it? How do I then go look at that and try to improve myself as a player?
There's a few different ways. The number one way that I would recommend is on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, or maybe every 5,000 hands if you don't play all that often. You want to go through your stats and record specific statistical numbers and win rates. Win rates, for everybody listening who's a rec player, maybe has never thought about it. Like, you go to a live poker game and you count your winnings at the end of the month. It took you 20 hours to get those winnings, so you made $20 per hour. In online poker, we look at big blinds per 100 hands played. We don't really look at hours so much unless you want to, because online players put in anywhere from 5 to 50,000 hands a month, right? Maybe 40 to 80 hours if they want to play that much. Well, looking at that win rate is important. So, some of the best win rates to look at would be like what your win rate is when you're calling a 2-bet pre-flop, when you're 3-betting, when you're C-betting, when you're calling a C-bet. So win rates for specific plays. Now, if you record these numbers for 1 week, the second week, the third week, the fourth week, and you see consistently red numbers across the board, every time I call C-bets on the flop, I'm losing 200 big blinds per 100 hands. Every time in 4 weeks in a row, you have an issue right there. You're calling way too much. You need to be folding more or raising more. But regardless, there's your issue. Now you dive into those hands and where you call the C-bets, and also do some C-bet calling strategy, like study an article, a video, and that kind of thing, and then review those hands around that leak that you found to figure out what you're doing wrong.
So what do you think a good balance of that is? I think for a lot of recreational players, are like, man, if I have any time at all, I just want to play. But I want to get better, but I'm not going to study. I'm not going to evaluate my own play. I just want to play. And I think we just sort of think, well, the more we play, the better we're going to get. I don't know that that's true. What do you think is sort of I know it's different for everybody, but a general rule of thumb, if there is one, or a balance of how much should I be playing versus how much actually, studying, whether that's with my group of friends, whether it's evaluating my database, whether it's, reading a book. How should we be thinking about that?
1 study session for every 1 or 2 play sessions. So if you're really gung-ho on improving your game, you play tonight for 2 hours, study tomorrow for between 10 and 30 minutes. however you want to do it. Like you mentioned a lot of different ways, whether it's database or reading an article, video, but study with an idea that last night, maybe you had, as you were playing, you were really focused on looking for good 3-bet bluffs. And you pulled the trigger a few times. Some of them were successful, some of them not so successful. When you study the next day, study 3-bet bluffing, either strategies from a video or go through your hands where you had the chance to 3-bet and you did and you didn't, and see if you missed any good opportunities. So pair your studies with your on-the-felt focus.
So I've got a question that kind of takes off from there. You spoke a little earlier about some simple stats for HUD users to use to get the most out of their on-ramp into the HUD experience. You've been working with HUDs for so long now. What are some of the more sophisticated stats that you can still get a lot of information from at a glance, or someone that's sort of getting better and they're thinking, like, what are those really sexy stats that only Sky knows how to look for and get the most out of? What are we talking about in that department? What's turned your crank lately?
So let's think about two different things, pre-flop first and then post-flop. So pre-flop, you're thinking about your opponents, they make a play, and you want to look at the HUD, look at their percentage related to that play to kind of get a gauge if they're full of bluffs or if they're only value in this spot. What I really like, and I've been really focusing on for myself, is paying attention to my opponent's 3-bet and their squeeze stats by position. So for anybody who doesn't know, a squeeze is somebody open raises, somebody else calls, you come in with a 3-bet over those two, or if there's more callers, those callers right there. And when you look in your HUD and you see, for example, in the small blind, their 3-bet stat is only 5%, but their 3-bet squeeze is 15%. Wow, he loves to squeeze as a bluff in the small blind. But when he's just regular 3-betting, maybe half the time for value, half the time for bluffs. So you can plan ahead accordingly for that, right? If you open raise, somebody else calls and he squeezes in the small blind, he's probably bluffing. I can choose to call or I can come back over the top. But because he's probably bluffing, I might not want to fold. So that's a complicated, like using two different stats by position to gauge my own reaction to it. And then another thing, if he's 3-bet squeezing a lot in the small blind, I can call someone else's open raise with the plan to come back over the top and shove it in his face when he squeezes me. Because he's squeeze bluffing, I might as well come back and steal that, maybe 12, 15 big blinds, whatever size he made it right there. So that's my first recommendation for pre-flop. For post-flop, I love, and I've always loved the C-bet and the fold to C-bet stats by street, flop, turn, and river. Two different exploits that you should start looking for. When you call somebody's pre-flop raise, they now have the opportunity to C-bet on the flop. You want to look for their street of honesty, and that's where their C-bet is really low. If they C-bet only 30%, that's very infrequently. It's probably only one pair hand or pair or better, plus maybe the best draws, like a nut flush draw, right? If it's really low. If it's high, like 70%, this guy's full of bluffs when he's C-betting. Well, what you want to look for is C-bet high on the flop to low on the turn. He goes from 70 to 30%. This guy bluffs a lot on the flop, but he's honest on the turn. He doesn't like to double barrel. Against those guys, you're going to call them pre-flop, maybe on the button. You call their flop C-bet almost 100% of the time. If it's a decent board and it doesn't smack their raising range, When they check the turn, bam, you fire a bet and take that pot down because you're banking on his tendency of turn honesty. He only C-bets when he's got it. He didn't C-bet. I'm firing to take it down. That's the first one. The second one is looking at any given street, the C-bet and the fold to C-bet at the same time. So you might see somebody on the flop who C-bets 70% of the time, fold to C-bets only 10% of the time. This person is not flop honest. They never fold on the flop. They always C-bet as a bluff, and they don't like folding because it's only 10%. Bam, against that player, like Rob is talking about, those people in Laughlin, you don't want to bluff them on the flop. They're just not going to fold. So instead, value bet. And because they don't fold, value bet big right there.
Yeah, I love it. I'm like, oh, sweet, this is also good. I'm so bummed I don't have all the data to support this. It seems like a lot of fun to kind of dig into, right?
Mm-hmm. It is, and it just takes a lot of people, like you had said, when you first look at it, it's intimidating, it's overwhelming, it's so many freaking numbers.
Yeah.
Just like if you start with a poker tracker for default HUD, just start with that default and just focus on VPIP and PFR, like I said. over time, just have a new focus every single session that you play. Today, I'm going to look at the 3-bet stat. So every time somebody 3-bets, look at the stat and try to gauge, are they bluffing? Are they doing this for value? The next session you play, fold to C-bet. Before you C-bet, look at their fold to C-bet stat and gauge whether or not they're honest. And that might lead you to making better C-bets.
I want to turn it over to Chris in 1 second, but I have a question about this. So, if somebody doesn't play a lot online, and I've seen the HUD stats, and I've played with the HUD, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's overwhelming because I'm lazy and I'm multitasking. I don't get into it. But I'm wondering, like, you guys that play with the HUDs all the time, like, when you go play live, then do you like sort of think in terms of HUD? Like, are you thinking like, oh, this person's opened a lot of pots, I'm just going to sort of characterize them as a high VPIP. I'm going to, they folded to a lot of continuation bets. I'm just going to sort of think about it that way. Does the HUD sort of form this construct for labeling players in a way?
For me, absolutely it does. When I'm playing live, I'm thinking the same thing. If this guy's limping a ton, he's just a fish. I'm going to think of him as a 40/5, 70 / whatever he might appear to be to me. If somebody's 3-betting and they're aggressive and they C-bet and double barrel and they triple barrel a lot, that's a loose aggressive player. So I'm going to play against them like I do my online competitors.
Yeah, and I even think about them in the colors that I use on my HUD for different extremes of the range. Like not even on purpose, but just I'll and it's not like I think that player's green and that player's red. But when I think about them strategically, they're tagged red, they're tagged green, and I think that really helps me just put them in a box that allows me to make better better assumptions about their range. Really. Guy, do you find that because when I play, well, here, Rob, why don't you jump in? Did you want?
I was just going to say it's kind of funny because I do it the opposite way. I use the HUD when I'm playing online to try to understand what I already understand about a live player, because I haven't played as much online to use the HUD. So when I see a live player that limp, when I look at my HUD, I look at somebody that's a 40% beat. Go, well, that's that guy that limps all the time. So it's the opposite of what you guys are doing because you're so HUD oriented and I'm more live oriented. So it's kind of, I use the HUD to try to understand what
I'm the same way, Rob. I'm like, oh, they're playing like this live person I know.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Interesting.
That's where I'm at.
That's perfect.
Majority of mine's been live too before quarantine.
Yeah, and I played live like growing up for fun with like family members at Thanksgiving and that kind of thing. But as a real thoughtful poker player, it's always been online for me, and I think it's a real problem for me when I play live because I played online so much. I really do use the HUD as a crutch, and I'm even not all that good on like the simple mechanics of playing live. Sky, what's your take on that? Have you experienced that as well?
Not. I mean, for me, I started off live, started playing 2-4 limit back in the day, back in 03, and then gradually like got into the online realm. And I rarely get back to the live realm. I mean, especially now with COVID, but pre-COVID, in the past year, March to March, I was probably playing, or I probably played one time live. I didn't even go to Vegas in 2019 for the World Series. So my live play has dropped dramatically since the start. So I kind of I don't know. I try to think in terms of what type of player they are and then make plays based, exploit them based on that.
Guy, one of the questions I see all the time, like on our forums and from Rec Player, are people who are just starting to start using HUDs and start to think about this, and they want to learn from it. They want to get better. But then there's this sense of like, I don't really know. Like and so a lot of the questions are like, well, I'm 3-betting 9% of the time. Is that good or is that bad? I'm C-betting 50% of the time. Is that good or is that bad? And so like, where can people find, are there resources out there where people can find some sort of general frameworks for their game to like compare where they're at with where they might want to strive to go towards?
Yes, there are. Poker Tracker 4 has a set. You could probably Google Poker Tracker 4 Leak Tracker videos. They have a set of 35, 40 different videos anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes long on different statistics. You watch those videos, and they did a lot of research from all the players that use them in their databases and stuff, and they found that your average winner will have a VPIP of here to here, like 17 to 35%. Their CBET will be like 55 to 69%. So you watch those videos and you'll get a sense of what's good or not. Now, so that's the start. But what I try to tell my students, yes, that is where the average winner is, but that's not necessarily where you need to be. Like, your opponents are the way they are. You're playing at Poker Stars versus America's Card Room versus 888 Poker. You're as long as you're making good decisions and you're basing your play on who your opponent is, their range of hands, how it interacts with the board, and all the other information, your stats kind of fall where they're going to fall. You might be the perfect C-better in your games, and you're only C-betting at 45% because nobody likes folding, so you don't often bluff, and everybody calls, and gives you a ton of value, so you're going to be C-betting them. And just naturally, if it falls at 45%, so be it. But if your stat is at 45 and the average range is 55 to 69, just for an example, then that's an indication of where you might have a leak. Then you can go through your database and look at C-bet opportunities and see, oh my gosh, I missed 5 good bluffs here, because you reviewed those hands, you saw the opponent, you saw that they're folding 65% of the time, you probably should have bluffed against them.
That's so good. I want to talk a little bit about draws, and maybe Chris will have a question here related to draws, because that's our December topic for our monthly seminar. But the thing that's interesting for me about draws is it's something with HUDs. Is there something that we can use to help inform us how we should play draws? Now, there's strategy about trying to maximize value and when we should be calling versus betting versus folding and all those things. There's sort of strategies, but when it comes to using the HUD for some of those decisions, are there certain scenarios where you're like leaning on the HUD in draw type situations, whether you have the draw or whether you're facing aggression or deciding if you should aggress?
Yes. It's not, the stat I'm going to say isn't draw related. It's just, not the stat I'm going to say. Whatever their play is, if they C-bet, you're looking at their C-bet stat. If they donk bet, you're looking at that. If they check raised your C-bet, you're going to look at that stat as well. That percentage will tell you whether or not they're full of it or they're probably doing it for value. Now, whether you have a draw or not, you're going to base your play based on what you think that they're doing. So if you have a draw and you're getting a good price on the draw and they're full of bluffs, sure, calling is just fine because they only bet 1/4 pot. You only need 25% equity. Calling a quarter pot, you'll whatever. We don't need to get into the exact math, but you're getting the right price right there. So go ahead and make the call. But if they're bluffing a lot, you don't even have to hit your draw. You don't have to call. If you think they're folding a lot, maybe they're one stat C-bet and then fold to a raise. Maybe that's high, like it's 65%. Go ahead and check raise with your draw. If he calls, you might still hit it on the turn. And if he folds, great. You didn't have to hit your draw, but you picked up his C-bet right there.
So in some cases, it's sort of looking at, responding if they aggress, sort of looking at the stats and saying, oh, well, they tend to, this is too big of a number, so they tend to be bluffing too much in this spot, so that's going to change my play. So it's a reactive piece, but then there's also, it sounds like kind of a proactive piece of saying, well, if they overfold turns, I can semi-bluff more often than maybe I would otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Is that sort of
absolutely?
And one of the things that a HUD's really good at is it gives you a lot of information right at a glance, just easy to understand numbers, usually in a percentage form. And usually what they're measuring is frequency. So the frequency of an action, that helps you kind of define how big that range is. But the other side of that coin is the note tracker. And what that does is it actually collects the hands that player went to showdown with, and then goes and makes lists of all the circumstances that they did that with those hands. So when it comes to draws, it can actually tell you in the past, this player's played this draw passively, this player's played this draw aggressively. It can say this player, calls in position only with suited cards. So that would, incline you to think that they're going to be in a more draw-heavy situation, stuff like that. So between the two of them, getting the frequency from one side and then the actual content of that frequency from the note tracker, I find is just a really powerful way to really get to know somebody just by playing with them.
Absolutely. That is super helpful, that note tracker. Just the whole note editor thing. If you're taking notes, if you're paying attention to your opponents and you spot something that could be a future tell, a large bet size, a check raise that's out of the ordinary, go ahead and keep that or take a note on them yourself within Poker Tracker 4. And those notes can be very helpful. Just like if you're playing live and between hands you whip out Evernote and say, "Oh, Bob loves to," I don't know, whatever the note might be. Those things come back and they're useful in the future for exploiting your opponents.
That kind of led into what I was going to be talking about with came to notes and that kind of thing. So for your students, do you tell them to take a whole bunch of notes so they can come back to you and have a good study session? And then also, like, for Poker Tracker, it does a lot of notes. Obviously you want to take some more notes, but how much do you have your students rely on the Poker Tracker notes versus their personal notes?
Their personal notes more. Now, the Poker Tracker is super useful because, as Jim was saying, it'll show you that they called the 3-bet pre-flop with 7-6 suited. So that they have that hand. They have 7-6, they have 8-7, they have 9-8, they have 10-8. So basically just how it works. If they have that weak hand, they have all the better ones in their range as well. Those really help. But your own personal notes, you're the one paying attention. You should be the one paying attention to the action, trying to read into what your opponents are doing. And if you spot something that you think can be useful later, you've got to be taking those notes. And one thing I tell my students is they're often playing anywhere from 2 to 5 to 7 tables. I have some players play. It's really hard to take notes in the moment at that time. So what you need to do when you're reviewing hands afterwards in your study sessions, that's when you need to take notes. You saw Bob 1, 2, 3 make this play in your study session. You're not going to remember that the next time you play Bob. You're 7 tabling. You have 7 times 6, 42 opponents that you're dealing with. You're not going to remember that play about Bob. So take notes off the felt about your opponents as well.
So what have you found as sort of, as we start to kind of shift gears, we wrap up a little bit, but I'm curious, like, what you found as some of the best study methods for people. So, you're obviously a big fan of the HUD, playing with a HUD, going back and looking at your own sessions. Are you sort of a proponent of an individual study plan, a group plan, listening, reading? What would you say to the general rec poker that's out there going, I listen to the Rec Poker podcast, maybe I listen to Sky's podcast as well, but I kind of need something more, and I don't know that I have the internal capability to just create that myself. I need something more. What would you tell people as far as how they can improve their game?
So two things. The first is hand reading. That is the most critical thing. If you go to my website, smartpokerstudy.com/hand reading, you're going to find a super comprehensive tutorial on how to do hand reading. This is the most important thing. Hand reading forces you to think about the type of opponent that you're up against and the range of hands they play pre-flop. And then you take that range through the streets and then you narrow it based on their actions. Constantly doing that kind of work off the felt it trains you to think about ranges as a habit in your brain as you're playing as well. So when you open and raise and then somebody calls in the big blind, your mind's just naturally going to think, oh, he has this type of hand. You're not going to visualize in your mind the complete range, but you're going to at least have an idea now of his range. When that flop hits, bam, you think, oh, his range interacts well with the flop. I better be careful. Or not at all. I can bluff away. That kind of thing. So hand reading is the number one skill. But beyond that, if there's one thing that I can recommend for anybody to study and to use on the felt and off the felt, it's poker's ultimate question. And that question is, what is he doing this with? So your opponent c-bets. Instead of just, oh, I have a draw, I call. No. I have nothing, I fold. No. What is he doing this with? To answer that question properly, it forces you to think about his range of hands, the type of player he is, his bet size, how his range interacts with the board, his position. He's out of position against you. Maybe he's in position. That might have an effect. So that is the one thing. If you can train your mind as a habit to always ask that question when your opponent makes an act. He open raises. What's he doing this with? He 3-bet me. What's he doing this with? He bet on the river. What's he doing this with? The answer to that question will always guide your button click. And without doing any studying, just having that question in your mind and answering it, you're going to be a much better player, making better decisions.
I love that so much. I love it's the motivation of what they're doing and why they're doing it. And I think then our response to that should be I think some people struggle with what is the response then. Okay, well, see, I know they're doing this with, or I think they're doing this with this range. So what? I think for a lot of people, they still need that next step of, okay, now I've gotten there. But if you can't answer that question, to your point, you're completely guessing. You're completely lost. You have to have that first piece.
Yeah, exactly. And I can answer that. so if you answer that question, he's full of bluffs right now. The next step is to think about your options. The great thing for online players is that when it's your turn to act, 3 buttons pop up: fold, call, raise. Those should remind you. Those are your friends. Those are your best friends on the table, besides the HUD. They remind you that you have options. You don't just have to call when you have that draw. You don't have to call with second pair. You can fold. You can raise as well. So once you answer that question and you have a good idea of what he's on, then think about your options. Which is my best option? Should I fold? Should I call? Should I raise? And that's what you need to do. I mean, there's a ton more. We can get specific strategies and stuff, but those 2 things, you'll be such a better player.
But that's sort of where the creativity comes in, right? Like often we don't think it's fold or call. We don't necessarily think of that raise as the next option. And I think for a lot of the recreational players, as we've been working with Free Jatin too, are saying, I want to add some aggression to my game. And I think sometimes I just feel like it just starts with asking the question, could I raise here? I think a lot of us don't even consider that as an option in a lot of spots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if your audience wants to increase their aggression, 2 ways you do it. Do it on the button or in the cutoff. So if you're going to be open raising more, to choose those 2 best positions just to start testing out the king 9 suited, the queen 8 suited as your open raise, right? In those 2. And post flop, be more willing to bet when you're in position against your opponents right there. Mm-hmm. So if you want to increase aggression, that's it. The 2 best positions pre-flop, in position post-flop.
I love it. Because that's something we've talked about is people say, I want to be more aggressive. So they just start being more aggressive without like a strategy on how. They just sort of like everything becomes more aggressive. And so they end up sort of, they end up 3-betting the under the gun raiser and all kinds of things more often. And that's usually a recipe for disaster. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk about what's going on more specifically. I know you've got some stuff coming up here that you're promoting over the holidays. And then we have the Poker Forge. I know we've got a relationship now with you on that Smart Poker Study podcast. Tell us what's going on in your world. What should people be paying attention to? What's coming out of the Sky Matsuhashi camp that people should be signing up for? And then I guess also, how can they just connect with you if they're like, okay, I don't know about all this, but I need to connect. Tell us a little bit about your story, what's available.
Yeah, definitely. Right now I'm running a big promotion. Free 14-day trial with the Poker Forge. I've never done a free trial before. And it's going on. Just go to thepokerforge.com. You can sign up. 14 days absolutely free. And then you can check out all 8 masterclass courses that I have inside the Forge, along with all of the different bonus stuff. And going on with that, some of your listeners might be familiar because I'm doing the 12 days of 12 days of Christmas right now.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, it is the same thing for us for sure. Every single podcast episode, the Daily Poker Tips and the Smart Poker Study podcast, they all revolve around a lot of players have an issue and they think that it might be impossible to make money with online poker. During these 12 days of Christmas, each podcast episode is addressing one of those common issues, like people thinking that they need to be a math person to make money in online poker. They need to have time to study and play. They need to get beyond their wife telling them no more poker, right? There's all these objections people have to having a profitable online poker journey, and the 12 days of Christmas answers those objections. And then if you want to connect with me, just at Smart Poker Study on Twitter. Or, of course, just go to the smartpokerstudy.com page. Leave a comment on anything. I respond to everything in YouTube. I'm Smart Poker Study. I respond to every comment there as well. So it's pretty easy to contact me.
Yeah, you're very easy to get a hold of. And if you have problems, just reach out to us and we will make the connection for sure. I do have another question. I wasn't expecting to ask this one, but what's your perspective on having Aaron Rodgers as your wallpaper during a Zoom meeting? Do you have any thoughts on that? Because... it drives me crazy.
Does it really? Well, we're
from Minnesota, so this drives me crazy.
Yeah. So how's the division lead going? Oh, that's right. We clinched it.
Hey, where's that mute button?
Rude.
No, I'll do it for
Rude.
There it is. Sky, so what's your perspective on Aaron Rodgers? Is that the right kind of wallpaper you should be using for a Zoom meeting?
Hey, man, whatever you're into, I'm down with it. I mean, you can see in the background, I have a few different manga and comic book stuff on my walls. I mean, you post what you're interested in. As far as Aaron Rodgers goes, the only experience I ever have, the only thought I've really given him was my first fantasy football league. I drafted him as my quarterback. And this might have been back in, in 2010. It was a long time ago. But
2010 was a good year to do that.
Yeah. Then it wasn't 2010. It was a year. Well, because it was a year where he got injured 5 games in, 5 weeks in, and he was out for the rest of the season.
maybe a bar hit or something.
Hopefully the Anthony
Poker
Barr
podcast, Packer podcast. Now.
Well, good stuff, Sky. Any final questions for Sky? You guys, I know this time goes by really, really quick, and we all have questions. But any burning stuff that we need to know from Sky?
He's real free with his chime on Twitter, so if we forget something, we'll just reach out. I know it.
Yep, Sky, you're awesome, man. You've been a great friend of the show over the years when we were fledgling, and now we're only mini fledgling. So maybe in 5 years we'll be, medium fledgling. But man, we appreciate your time. Good friend of the show. Great poker mind. Very approachable. Easy to learn from, you guys. I know a lot of folks are like, okay, this person's overwhelming. Sky is not that. Sky is very good at taking complex subjects, boiling them down, saying, here's what you need to know. So I really encourage you guys, listen to the podcast, check out the website, take advantage of the free trial. But Sky, man, thanks a lot for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it, guys. I had a good time.
All right, we'll chat again soon. As Sky heads off, guys, we're going to transition to kind of the community piece. One thing, man, we talked about this. If you are a premium member and you're hanging out with us, we got a drawing. We're going to be drawing for $50 off the free Jatin training course. If you've already signed up for the course, we'll just refund you $50. It's just like cash, so you can still go ahead and sign up for the course. You're not going to miss out if you happen to get a coupon. We've got our live stuff that we record. We're giving away coupons. We've got all these Easter eggs all over. If you respond to the newsletter, all kinds of stuff to enter drawings for other coupons. So we're trying to make it as affordable as possible to enter into this training. But it's top-notch training, you guys. Like it's 20 hours of training with the 5th best poker player in the world, and he is the real deal, man. Let me tell you this about Freed. So, we had a conversation with him. We're doing some work with his business. Fantastic guy. So he's out in Vegas, right? He goes out there to play the main event, which he did cash. He just busted like 68th or something, 64th. But anyway, he's out in Vegas. I won't put the name out here because I don't know if he cares, but there's somebody, part of Rec Poker Nation, who was also out in Vegas. I said, let's connect the two of them. They connect. They end up having dinner together, and hanging out that night. They were just hanging out that night, having dinner, drinks. Fareed is the real deal on and off the felt. And I think not only will you enjoy the course from a learning perspective, but just the guy just brings energy and brings life and positivity everywhere he goes. So I really want to encourage you guys to check that out. But Jim, I don't know if you have a plan on giving away this, if we should do it now, if you want to wait. What's your thought?
Let's just do it. I like using my nerd dice for this kind of stuff. And,
any chance Jim has to use a dice? You could actually use a 6-sided dice, Jim. You don't need to use
I know. I'm just
a 20-sided nerd dice.
I'm just going to use a boring old. Of course, it's black and yellow, just in case there was any question as to how that would work.
So let us know who wins this bad boy.
Yeah, I see we've got 5 people in here, so I'm just going to take the 6 out of play, and we'll roll it, and we'll count it down from 5 down. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Kim gets $50 off the free Jatin training course at rec.poker.
Congrats, Kim. Fantastic. One of our Canadian friends. Dominates the home game. I just can't believe it wasn't a 2 that was rolled there. I cannot believe Doug didn't win the die roll. I'm in shock. But
didn't Doug already win one of these giveaways?
I know. Well, so guys, let's talk a little bit about Sky. What sort of reaction, kind of coming back out of that conversation? What did you guys pull out of there? I know you could all ask a bunch of different questions, but what was your takeaways?
I like his energy. I mean, he's got a very positive, very, very strong energy where you obviously can tell this is something he's very passionate about, which happens a lot around here, but that's because we're all passionate about poker. But I just like his approach, and he takes more of a statistical side of it than I usually would, like Jim would with the HUDs. And I'm coming from live, so it is an adjustment for me, but it's always nice to have that too.
He's got that great radio voice, right? Like I always wish I was like that, where he's just so articulate and calm and sharing, and I'm like, but he's very. I love the way he talks. Somsky.
Well, I was actually going to mention the same thing. While you sense his passion, he also has a calmness about him, and it's like if you compare that to someone like Mike Matsuhashi, who's also passionate about the game but has zero calmness at all. So it's just really nice to be able to listen to him, and he does a good job at explaining things. It's very thorough, thought out.
Is Sky a 2.7 listenable guy, or whatever you listen to speed wise?
Oh yeah, he'd be triple time because he enunciates very well and he talks slowly. So No
Yeah.
problem speeding
That's
it
one of
up.
the fastest ones I listen to because it's very clear and very easy to
Yeah,
listen to.
I bet.
The bass comes through of his voice comes through much better.
Technically sound. He's he's got it all figured out. Of course.
I think you said it the best, Steve, when you mentioned that. Nice, Chris.
Yes.
You said it. You said it the best when you said how he breaks down things so that you can understand him so well. And that's what I found in since I started watching or listening to his podcast way in the beginning. And then if you want some individual actionable training, go to his YouTube channel. I mean, he has all his stuff out there about how to use HUDs, how they work, what all the stats mean, how to analyze your own play. He does it all right on YouTube, and it's so easy to understand. You can just walk right through it step by step, and it's really, really good.
Yeah,
I love
you've been talking about him. You've been a fan of his for a long time, Rob.
Yeah.
I know that. Chris, go ahead. Sorry.
No, the thing I took away tonight, I use the HUD and I think about things a lot, but the thing that I took away the most was when he talked about the street of honesty. I love that concept. I'd never really, I definitely look for that, but that's a really like concrete way to think about people's stats and, and just basic Zoom photos as well. But no, it's that street of honesty thing when you're looking at people's CBET thing, because people have real tendencies on that. So I love that concept.
Yeah, I wrote that down too. Street of honesty. And in case you're listening to this, I know most of our listeners are most of our watchers are just listeners. You don't see the video, but we're having a little bit of fun with our Zoom background. So if you're wondering why there's chortling going on, there's a lot of Viking versus Packer Zoom background switching going on right now. But yeah, no, I love that too, Chris. I love that idea because that's kind of my question. I don't really use HUDs. I really don't play online. When I do, I kind of get confused. I'm like, I don't really know how to use this the best. So I think that was a good insight. Well, let's shift gears, guys. Let's talk about what's going on in Rec Poker Nation a little bit. We teased some of it on the front end with what's going on, but maybe let's start with Mr. Somsky, because I think I do think one of the bigger pieces of information, we have a lot of great stuff, is our Rec Poker home games. And I don't know how often to say this, how well we can say this, but you will be suspended. You will be kicked out of the PokerStars home game if you do not have a free Rec Poker membership or higher, and if you do not have your PokerStars username in your extended profile on your Rec Poker account. If you don't have those on January 1st, you won't be part of the PokerStars home game. So, there's how much is at stake? I don't know, but you're going to start getting behind on our Player of the Year stuff. So, John, I'll turn it over to you, but I just want to make sure that people realize this is going to happen. You will be suspended if you're not set up. And the point of that is, again, we're trying to build community, and this is how we're going to do it. But, John, did I miss something on that at all? Or
No, that sounds good. We still have 170 players that are at risk for suspension. Now, that's compared to 135 players who are in good standing. In other words, over half of our club. Yeah, we're over 300. We're at 308, I think, or something like that. But over half of our club will be suspended on January 1st as things sit right now. You still have time to create your profile in Rec Poker and put your PokerStars username in the profile. Again, it doesn't have to be public unless you want it to be, and it's totally up to you. If you want your name to be announced on the podcast when we announce these winners, then your PokerStars username needs to be public and your name needs to be public on your profile.
now, can we? I assume we can kick out Magger44, right? We're not. That username is never going to be accepted into the club again. Is that my understanding?
Well, actually, if he wins 2 more tournaments, he's hit his quota, and then he will be unable to play because that's the maximum PokerStars will allow.
We have a lifetime maximum.
Yeah. So anyway, another piece of home game news before we get to the stuff everyone actually really wants to hear. Some interesting things are going to be happening with the international series and with some of the other things that are going on. We realized that these are all really just additional daily tournaments that we're having. So we're going to be rebranding the nightly series as our daily series, no matter what time of day it is. The international series are just going to be 2 international-based tournaments within the daily series. Also, we do have every Saturday now, there's going to be an additional mixed game. So we're not taking away the No Limit Hold'em, but there'll also be a mixed game there. And it'll be the same format that the next mixed game series will have. So it'll give you a few opportunities to practice that before you actually play for the points.
Wait a second, John. Are you saying on Saturdays we're running 4 tournaments and 2 of them are mixed games?
Yeah, that means Sundays I need to enter the results for 4 tournaments. But 2 of them are not mixed games. Just one of them is a mixed game.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Good point.
The rest, all 3 others are for the No Limit Hold'em stuff.
I'm really glad we're having the practice, too, because I was playing the 5-card draw, single draw, whatever they call it as practice. You know, again, now I was multitasking with 2 other tournaments going on. And twice in the first orbit, I'm like, okay, I drew once, and now I got this big draw, like a huge combo draw after that first draw, and somebody bets half pot, and I call because I got like this massive draw, and then the cards were exposed. There was no second draw. I'm like, I got a big, it's like I have a big draw on the river in Texas Hold'em, and I'm calling off for a big chunk of my stack. I did that twice in the first orbit, so single draw. So I'm glad we have the practice.
Yeah, and I'm not sure a HUD's going to help with that, Steve. You're going to have to just...
Yeah, I didn't have a HUD.
Where does the HUD tell you how many cards you get to draw? How many draws we have?
Anyway, yeah. So John, thanks again for that. So what I'm hearing is that we've got we'll have the monthly No Limit Hold'em once a month, first Wednesday. Yep. Boom. There'll be a Player of the Year in points and a Player of the Year tournament next year. And then there's the second Wednesday is going to be the mixed series, the one that actually counts. There'll be Player of the Year points for that. Everything else we're just going to lump into. We'll call it a daily tournament just for the sake of management piece. But there's going to be a bunch of them going on, and who knows what else we're going to do.
And one other note, if you play in what has been up till now known as the International Series, from now on that will qualify you for winning a bronze pin in addition to getting into the dailies or into the Tournament of Champions.
Yep.
However, you get 1 bronze pin per year for the entire daily series. So it doesn't matter whether you win the international tournament, whether you win one of the practice mix tournaments or one of the other daily tournaments, you still get 1 bronze pin for the year. But it gives you another opportunity to run it, and these international tournaments are still running a little bit lower on the field counts, although this weekend we had a good turnout for both of them. I think 16 for the lower one and 20-something for the higher one, so it was a good turnout.
Nice.
Okay, now we are actually on to the actual news that we have to we're done with the preamble there.
We're warmed up.
Yeah, we did have our mix series this last week. It was 8-game mix, which is one of my favorites because it has 8 different formats to run in. I am not sure whether or not I lasted long enough to play each of the 8. My particular performance was not good in this tournament. However, it seems very fitting that Patty 98 wins the final tournament of the year.
Oh, Canada. God bless that guy. He's kicking butt.
Absolutely. He won in January. He won in February. Then he decided to take a little break, and Taylor Moss won in March. And then he came back and won in April. And now he's come back and he's won in December. So he won 4 of the 12 tournaments,
Amazing.
A full third of the tournaments that we had this year. He got 462.98 points. Now that's put him easily in first place. The second place finisher, which unfortunately was the aforementioned Taylor Moss, go for boy TJM, got 262 points. So that's 200-point difference between the two. That is dominating. I
mean, I know one of the things we're planning on giving away at the award show, I don't know if it's official yet, is Performance of the Year. And that's got to be one of the candidates, right? I mean, there's been a few pretty amazing things, but the mixed game performance.
Yeah, just off the top of my head here, and I am not involved in picking the people, and I haven't been involved in those conversations, so this is not a spoiler. But for me, the two of the biggest things we've seen is Patty 98, and then just in general, Magra 44.
Yeah, I agree.
Those are just two phenomenal accomplishments.
Yep. So I think those are probably a couple of our nominees. We have put it out there to a lot of Rec Poker Nation, a survey collecting nominees for different things. So if you haven't gotten it, ask. But if you've gotten it, do that survey. Yeah,
look at Twitter too, and look at the newsletter. We're going to put it out there a couple times, and we need help. We need help picking, voting for people. We need help naming these darn things. So please do fill out that survey. We appreciate it.
All right, John. So we let you get through the first result.
Okay, so now we're going to go on to what used to be known as the International Series. And, of course, we have Magra 44, Doug Graybeck, won the 8 a.m.
Never ends with this.
For his 6th international victory. And then we had Rick the Good Dog, Rick Rock Oman, won his very first international game.
Oh, I think it's his first overall. He's won other ones. I think that's his first international.
Yeah, just the first international.
Okay.
Nice, Rick.
And I think I'm gonna try to keeping track of how many international wins you have, but I'll be reporting how many overall dailies you have. But
amazing.
And are we starting that at 1 again in 2021, or is it per year, or are you going to have to actually keep track of like lifetime wins?
We'll have it all.
Right now, I'm planning on doing lifetime.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
So, that's the way the spreadsheet works. And in the future, we'll have a little bit more flexibility on what we do, but that's where we're at right now. Okay, then in our normal nightly or newly daily series, I Hate to Lose, William Alexander got his 4th nightly victory.
Sure.
Is NNMA Spike got his first nightly series victory. Uncle Tom's Cabin, Jeff S. 2nd nightly. Rick the Good Dog, Rick Rock Oman got his 3rd nightly. So he got 2 victories in the same week.
Nice.
Keto Man 335, who I want to apologize for having evidently mispronounced his name. I was on a different podcast with him, and he said, "Yeah, you always leave this name off," and that was a little bit of a humble brag that I've had to mention his name. Kian Tavakoli. So hopefully I got that right for you. Got his first nightly mixed series victory.
There you go, Kian.
And GF Hawk, who has a private name, got his first nightly victory.
Nice. Yeah, nice to see some new winners in there.
Yeah, it's nice.
Awesome. And we're getting what, 70 people or so on these nightly tournaments? Somewhere in that ballpark? Yes. Crazy.
On a slow night, we'll get in the 50s. On a big night, in the 70s.
So the 8-game mixed tournament, I was excited to jump in there. I figured I'll play for half an hour and then I'll move on with my day. I did get 3rd in that, so it's a little bit of a sick break, but I didn't know what I was doing. I'm Googling every game that comes up, like Raz. I'm calling with like ace 2 3 5 because I got the nuts, right, or whatever. No, ace is high in Raz. So I don't know what I'm doing, and somehow I got lucky.
No, ace is low in Raz.
Oh, maybe it's the other one. Then I don't even know. It was the other one.
Deuce to 7.
Deuce to 7. I thought I got this thing, baby. I'm so golden here. Yeah, that was. I don't even know. I can't even pronounce it the right way. But anyway, it's 2 a.m. I played 6 hours, and I didn't even get heads up. I was so depressed.
So that's one thing we should do is remind me to do the next year. I'll make it go a little faster for those.
It was super fun, and I know
because we have a couple of no limit and pot limit in there. And normally, if there's no limit and pot limit, that kind of takes the edge off. But you still end up having 6 limit games versus the 2 big bet.
I wasn't complaining. It was just it was interesting. I'm like, I was so depressed I got that far and then didn't win it. It would have been worth it if I would have won it. But yeah, I know that's got to be super tough because I know some of the mixed games they get done really quick, and a nightmare. Thanks for doing that, John. I know it's a nightmare, but no, super fun. I love jumping in there. I love all the camaraderie that's out there, and Danny Schneider always trying to figure out people's names that won't tell us their names.
Yeah.
It's just pretty fun. So thank you, John. Well, what else is going on, guys, that we need to talk about? I got a few things, but who else has something they want to bring up?
Well, we're doing our weekly study groups now. All the premium members that are enjoying Chris's take on the focus, we're talking about pre-flop ranges. And so every weekend on Saturday morning, a few of us get together just to compare notes. Sometimes we talk about the focus. Sometimes we just talk about other cool things going on in poker. So any premium member, just email jim@rec.poker. I'll send you the invite. It's been a lot of fun so far.
Sweet. Mm-hmm. And we have the free Jatin training coming up starting in February. So it's going to be fantastic. If you have any questions, let me know. We put the products out in the stores. You can go to rec.poker in the shop and you can select the product there. It kind of lays out the discounts you get. If you are a premium member, if you want to become a member, any of those sorts of things will get you discounts. And at the end of the day, just email me. I'll send you the code for what makes sense for your situation. I will give you a discount there, and you can win coupons and stuff through drawings and otherwise. Jim?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and we haven't talked about learning with partners in a while, but I know Andrew's putting together a whole new slate of clips for the first part of 2021. And I am so excited, just in case people are listening that haven't heard in a while. Every month, we take 15 minutes of this premium learning stuff from other top sites around the world. And Andrew selects them just for our premium members to come and take a look at. And then if we like, we can all get together and talk about it afterwards. But there is some really cutting-edge strategy being done at Rec.Poker.
It's pretty cool, right? So it's like an hour of premium content from other providers that's just sort of included in your Rec Poker membership. So that's pretty sweet. The award show, I know I mentioned it again. I mentioned it before. I'll mention it again, January 27th. It's going to be a blast. We got about a dozen pros already that have said, I'd love to give away an award. So just tell me what the award is and who won what, and they'll either be live or they'll be on video giving the award away. So that's going to be super fun and kind of add to that the whole night. Jonesy?
Yeah, no, I just in terms of Memberland, we're having we're getting excited that the next seminar is going to be on tells. Our December one's on draws. So we're really looking forward to that conversation too.
Awesome. Robert, how about you?
Oh, I was just saying, I think we should call the award the Oswald. I just, there's the Tony, there's the Oscar, and we had the first inaugural Rec Poker Day was on St. Oswald's Day. So I'm just thinking that why not just call it the Oswald? I just for I just a suggestion.
Rob's starting a. Yes, that's one of the. I know it's one of the questions we put on the survey is what should we call these things? And I know we've gotten like 20 or 30 responses or something so far. So they're starting to come in. People have some good ideas, but keep them coming. Maybe jump on Rob's bandwagon, and you can write in the Oswald.
The Oswald. We call it the Oswald. I love that. What a great name. Anyway, we got the book study coming up on this week, and I don't know when this is going to go out. Some people might not know, but
this will be released on the 22nd.
Okay, then we'll already have done this. But anyway, the first Wednesday and the third Wednesday of each month, we do the book study, and we have covered all the main 4 chapters of the book. And now we're going to go through and do the quiz hands that Chris has put out there for us to and ask ourselves these questions and how do you react and what do you do based on what we've learned so far in the first 4 sections. So we'll probably do that this next one, and then hopefully we can get Chris on board and we can do a quick Q&A with Chris to finish up that book study. And then just for everybody's information, we're probably going to take a break from the book study because we have some stuff coming up with Fareed, and that's going to be on the same day. So we could be taking a break from the book study. But what I would like everyone to do is send me a tweet. Yeah.
I can't send Jim through the mail.
Send me a tweet on books that you would like us to get into after Fareed is done on his thing, and we'll try to get some. I don't know. I like books that are kind of basic that bring us through, but we can also go into the modern poker theory. We can go into Andrew Brokos' second book, Play Optimal Poker 2, or we could go into something a little bit more basic if we want to, but let's get a show of hands as to what type of books that people want us to cover, and we'll jump into those and cover them as best we can.
And Rob, what's that Twitter address again?
Rabman50. I'm Rabman50 everywhere, remember?
Yeah,
everywhere in the nation, too, right now.
Send me a twit at Rabman50.
And just so everybody is clear, when we're talking about asking for book ideas, that is poker books, not if you listen to the beginning of the podcast, we were talking
Well, no.
Someone said no.
Okay.
True. That's great.
Somebody
That's
wants
great.
us to cover the Lord of the Rings. I mean, I'm sure we could do that too. But
Yeah, Wheel of Time is maybe my favorite series of all time. But I will say,
study.
Yeah, I think Rob and I would go hand in hand for that one. But that's a great point, Rob. So we are because the free course is going from through February. We are going to take a break on the Wednesday night activities. So that'll be a couple of book studies, a focus, and a strat chat that we'll just have to make up in March.
I think the free stuff, I think, is February 3rd to March 5th. I think that's the
right.
days, but it's the Wednesday and Friday of those 5 weeks. It's going to be locked in. And also, we're doing a supplemental piece. If you want to join that free study, you can also, in addition to or just by itself, you can actually jump into some rec poker discussions around that training as well, which are going to include some hours in the interior of that week as well. So really those 5 weeks, we're going to be pretty much focused on engaging with Fareed and that study and then talking about those studies. So I think that's a good idea to kind of take a break from the other stuff because it's going to be pretty intense, I think. Cool. And anything else going on in the nation? Go ahead, John.
Well, one really important thing, I think that the Dragon Reborn is the best book of the Wheel of Time series. So,
Am I the only one that had no idea what's happening?
That was
Andrew doesn't know.
Book number 2, wasn't it? Wasn't that book
number 3?
Oh, it's number 3. Okay, that's the one I'm reading right now. Then, so I haven't even finished it yet.
That was my favorite.
You're in for a treat.
Yeah. So I think we need to start a third podcast each week about the non-poker
science fiction and fantasy books.
Yeah, you guys, man. I bet there's an audience for it, right? You guys should start a little book study on Discord. Jump in the voice channel on every night, and you guys talk about. We don't have to be all poker. That's what we're going to focus on with the podcast and stuff. But if it's all about community, if there's a bunch of you that want to talk about sci-fi books, man, start a group, do it, get her done.
Start a group. Yeah, let's start a group. Why not? Good thinking.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, anything else for the good of the order? I know we always say we're going to cut these shorter and then we go long, but a lot of good stuff going on. I see heads shaking. All right, guys. Well, let's wrap it up there. Thanks to you guys for jumping on here. Ben, Doug, Kim, Martha, Jamel. Thanks for jumping on. There are members that are part of this thing. We got the music starting early, so it'll be done by the time I stop talking. But that's okay. You don't have to restart it. It's okay. Just let it go. But our sponsors are Running Aces, Racetrack, Casino, and Hotel. Big finish there. Website app, Learn Pro Poker, the small business community. Thanks to our guest, man, Sky Matsuhashi. That was super fun. Andrew, Rob, John, Jim, Chris, the great panel that we have, the folks that jumped on there. But yeah, that's it. We will chat with you guys. I guess the next episode will be a forums episode that released on Sunday, and then we'll chat back with you here on Tuesday. All right, guys, take care. Have a good one.